Post-it notes, Penicillin, and the HP Pavilion 14 Plus. What could these all possibly have in common? Well, they were accidental strokes of genius. Things that weren't exactly part of the original master plan, but ended up being surprisingly brilliant in their own rights. Especially concerning the Pavilion Plus because it just doesn't feel intentional. This laptop was the byproduct of several strange yet fortunate decisions, like the tech equivalent of the Big Bang, a bunch of unlikely choices colliding to something unexpectedly impressive. Because here's the thing, when you first hear HP Pavilion, you probably think of basic, middle-of-the-road laptops, right? Not something that's gonna turn heads. But this model, it makes some design choices that companies either avoid in this price class or only offer with big compromises. I mean, just look at some of HP's other mid-range offerings. This thing doesn't even feel like it came from the same line. This laptop launched in mid-2023 for $750 before being discounted to $700 in the fall. You couldn't and still can't get these specs for this sort of price. This model has been discontinued, unfortunately, and its lesser replacement costs more for inferior specs. And in today's uncertain climate, we've all got to be more price conscious than before. And that leads me to something a bit more personal, because the story of this laptop, its value, its sudden disappearance, mirrors a bigger issue that I've been feeling as of late, both as a content creator and a consumer. I want to come clean and say that the last few weeks have been a bit demoralizing for me as a small creator. Besides the major geopolitical issues with trade and tariffs going on, I've also been discouraged by the state of the tech industry itself. A lot of backwards momentum happening as costs go up, consumers get squeezed, and we all sit around wondering if things will ever get better. I had several video projects in the works, but they all got canned when I wasn't able to get any hardware in. Companies that originally said they were sending things in for me, then canceled, or if it was something that I had saved up money to buy, it suddenly was triple the price. I have 2 jobs, and that's barely enough to make ends meet sometimes. And I know someone will mention this, but yes, I acknowledge that I picked one of the worst times in history to become a tech-focused content creator. Luck like mine is what keeps me from the gambling parlors and, from buying scratch-off tickets. And I say all of this in, not some weak bid for audience pity, but to highlight the reality that a lot of us are now facing. We have to make do with what we have. We just can't afford anything else. And this is why I felt compelled to do a review of this laptop. A part of this is a desperate plea to companies, if you can, please. We need to go back to this thoughtful and anti-obsolescent mindset. The key to getting consumers to upgrade is not to make worse products and then charge more from them year over year. So with that in mind, let's talk about what made this machine stand out, and not just on principle, but on the actual hardware level, because when you break down the specs, the value here becomes even more obvious. This model of the HP Pavilion 14 Plus was released in 2023 and built on AMD's Ryzen 7 7840U platform. You're looking at an 8-core and 16-thread CPU paired with 12 compute units of RDNA 3 for the iGPU. You get 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X running at 6,400 megatransfers a second, and that's nothing to sneeze at. This laptop came out in mid-2023, and we were still getting 8GB laptops for the price of this one. Absolutely mental. The screen is a beautiful 14-inch OLED panel with a resolution of 2880 by 1800p and a peak brightness of 500 nits in HDR with about 420 nits in SDR. The panel is also one with a variable refresh rate of 48 Hz through 120. So when plugged in, the laptop will run at its max of 120 Hz, but on battery, you get a choice of either 60 or 48. The I/O selection is also pretty versatile. On the right side of the unit, you get one USB-A 3.0 port, one HDMI 2.1 port, and 2 USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 ports. So that's a max speed of 10 gigabits per second. Then on the left, you have a 3.5mm headphone and mic jack, and another USB-A 3.0 port. You also have a nicely sized diving board style trackpad with dimensions of 123 by 78mm. It's not a stellar feeling trackpad, but it's serviceable enough. You indeed can drag your finger across, and with its size, palm rejection works pretty well. The keyboard is one of my personal favorites. I mentioned this way back in my 1 Makes 2 review, but this keyboard here has decent travel and comes with keys that offer this sort of click and bounce. So you see, when typing, you sort of spring back from every keystroke, making your overall typing speed feel fluent and congruent. And thankfully, all the keys are the right size, shape, and color. The original models of the Pavilion 14 came with all silver keys and silver coloring on the key characters. So when the keyboard backlight was on, you could hardly see what you were typing. How that came into existence is beyond me, but HP, thankfully, learned from their mistakes with this model. Gray keycap colors with a white backlight allows for a super legible typing experience in low light. I've used this laptop in dim cabins and dark coffee shops without ever struggling to see the keys, and it's just functional. It feels like someone actually used the product before shipping it. You know, what a outlandish idea. But that kind of attention to detail goes a very long way. And that same thoughtfulness carries over to what's under the hood, because the keyboard might win you over at first touch, but the real power of this laptop is what happens when you put it to work. I've said it before and I will say it again, Zen 4 punches way above its weight class. The amount of performance you get from the power it uses is still impressive for today. The Ryzen 7 7840U is a 15 to 28 watt configurable part, and HP wisely chose to limit it to 15 watts on battery and let it stretch its legs up to 28 watts when plugged in. That was a smart move, balancing performance and battery life without cooking the chassis. Now, full disclosure, my performance data is going to be a little qualitative and a bit lackluster. You see, I'm not a big review lab with stacks of laptops and giant spreadsheets. This is my personal machine, but that doesn't mean I can't tell you what living with it actually feels like, because after, years of real world use, you learn a lot that raw benchmarks just can't capture. So to start off, these benchmarks will be done with the best performance power plant under Windows. For Cinebench R24, our single core speed was 95 points, a literal point behind the Ryzen 7 5800X. This result is also 25% faster than the 12th gen Intel 1280p, so not bad for a 28 watt package power. Our multi-core speed was 628 points, so to put that in perspective, we're 23% slower than the Apple M1 Max, but are 60% faster than the i9 9880H CPU. That's less of an impressive result compared to the M1 chip, but all these scores illustrate is a sort of lack of raw throughput power. For unplugged performance, we were on the best power efficiency plan and got a multi-core score of 494 points. Running this test on battery with 50% brightness saw us lose about 10% battery life. Single core performance came in at 40 points and a 17% loss of performance. Yeah, quite the drop. But raw numbers only tell a part of the story. What really matters is how the laptop feels in day-to-day use. And that's where the Pavilion 14 Plus continues to surprise me in all the right ways. This is gonna sound hyperbolic, but this laptop is the first one I've ever had that came close to emulating that sort of look and feel of a MacBook Air. You know, that je ne sais quoi Apple's lineup has. These sleek, thin, light, and quiet machines that feel almost like fashion accessories instead of computers. When I pull up somewhere to use my laptop, I don't feel like I'm actively compromising by using a Windows machine. Coming in at 3 pounds, it's got heft, but doesn't feel like a burden on my lap, especially since my machine rarely ever gets hot. I use my laptop mainly for writing documents, listening to music, PCB studies, and of course, surfing the web. And I really love to surf the web. I use about 80 or so tabs at any given time, sometimes even a little over 100, and I never close them, ever. The laptop just remains as snappy as the day I unboxed it. For typical battery life, I usually get about 9 hours on a full charge and half brightness. This is normally for me writing documents, listening to music, and again, surfing the web. The laptop just does its job incredibly well. I really can't complain about this type of performance. But it's not perfect, mind you. The video codec is not exactly the strongest or even that good. I mean, it does its job okay enough for video playback, but when it comes to heavier workloads like video editing, especially in something like Movavi, it struggles to fully leverage the hardware. And while 16 gigabytes of RAM is nice in this device class, I can't help but feel the squeeze when I'm trying to do something that's a little more heavier when it comes to multitasking. If you have mixed media workloads like I do, then you will run up that memory buffer. And with no way to upgrade the RAM, there is reason for concern about how graceful a machine like this can age. I suppose one could play with Linux, but that also comes with its own host of issues. But even with all those limitations, this laptop has something that's increasingly rare: balance. It's not trying to be flashy or overbuilt, it's just well executed. From the weight, to the thermals, to the real world endurance, it's a reminder that great design doesn't always need to be revolutionary. It just needs to make sense. And that's why I've held onto this machine like my life depends on it. Because in a way, it sort of does. I don't see a viable upgrade path for me. I always like to move up and not laterally when upgrading. And I never ever spent over 1K for a laptop. Who wants to pay more for less? And I know I'm not alone in that. A lot of people are in the same boat. Priced out of the high end, let down by the low end, and hoping, someone gets it right somewhere in the middle. That's why this kind of design matters more than ever. We need more designs like this. Laptops that are honest, capable, and built for actual people. Just like my videos are made for actual tech enthusiasts and price-conscious shoppers like yourself. I am the Silicon Fox, saying good night, and do not let the tariffs bite. Ciao.